Okay, we are now broadcasting to all of our attendees. Welcome. We'll give you a few minutes to stream in before we start. So welcome all. Thank you for joining us. We are broadcasting live on Facebook, on NAFSC's Facebook page. So please feel free to share that with your network. We will also be live tweeting this webinar using the hashtag NAFSC COVID response. So we invite you also to follow along there. You have joined our webinar. The topic today is National Organizations Share Their Plans for Family Engagement in Response to COVID-19. And as people are streaming in, just a few housekeeping items, and then I'll turn it over to the agenda because we have a jam-packed agenda today. Because people always ask, we will be recording this webinar. We will send out the recording and the slides to all registrants in the next few days. It will also be posted on NAFSC's COVID response page. That's nafsc.org/coronavirus, and that is visible to the public, so we welcome you to share it with your network as well. The second thing to mention, the chat feature. I see many of you already are introducing yourself in the chat, but we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat, your name, where you're from. Make sure that you are sending your chats to all panelists and attendees, so it goes to everyone. And then the last thing I wanted to share, we ask that if over the course of the presentation you have any questions for panelists, that you please ask them in the Q&A box rather than the chat box. It's easier to keep track of questions in the Q&A box because the chat, as you can see, it moves very quickly. So with that, we've got, wow, chat's moving faster than I've ever seen it. All right, I will turn it over to Vito Borrello, NAFSC's Executive Director.
Thank you, Alice. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon, and thank you all for taking the time on such short notice to arrange your schedule to be with us, also that of our presenters. My name is Vito Borrello. I'm the Executive Director of the National Association for Family, School, and Community Engagement, NAFSC. And I want to start with, on behalf of our board and staff, I want to just extend to each of you and your families our sincere best wishes during this very difficult time. COVID-19 is challenging us in incomparable ways that require us to come together as a country and as a family engagement field. We all know the significance of family and community engagement on child development and student achievement. And in responding to these challenges before us, families will play an even more significant role than they already do as educational partners. Over the past 2 weeks, I'm sure similar to me, you've received, almost been deluged with well wishes and all kinds of resources that are available to various constituencies. And when NAFSC was thinking about how could we be service to the field, how could we be of service to the field, we thought that the best thing we could do would be to bring together trusted organizations in one place to provide a broad perspective of resources and strategies that they will bring going forward to support educators, practitioners, and families as we address this challenge that we have in front of us. I want to thank the 11 national organizations and their leaders who are with us today. This happened in a very short turnaround, and I really appreciate the priority that they gave so that they could be available to all of you. And again, thanking all of you for being here as well. Okay, in terms of NAFSC's response, one of the things that we've done, this webinar is just the beginning, right? So we're going to have 11 organizations with 5-minute presentations. This is going to be kind of like a speed dating approach to a presentation into webinars. And so we have opened up our membership platform. What that means is we've waived our fees. We want the general public to join us and to utilize all of the services that our membership provides, particularly our online platform. We have a membership community, Member Connect, and this will be a place following this webinar where you can ask questions, you can seek support. There'll be all kinds of discussions, and all of this information will be there as well. Additionally, this will be archived. This will be sent to all registrants. It will be available on our website. And then we are creating a repository, actually we already have, and we'll be updating this daily with all of the resources that we receive from so many, so that again, you can have a trusted place to go where there will be a broad array of resources and strategies as we proceed in supporting families and their children during this difficult time. Okay, in speaking about the agenda, and actually before I get into the agenda, our Zoom platform accommodates 3,000, and we have more than 3,000 who have registered. So if for whatever reason you get knocked off, we have this live on our Facebook. Go to NAFSC's Facebook and the whole thing will be streamed live and you can participate there. The way that we have tried to make this, kind of group this in a way that works, since there are 11 organizations, is we've done it by categories or groups. So there will be an early childhood group, a parent leadership group, a cradle to career group, and then an equity and community group. And some organizations provide services beyond the categories that they've been grouped in, and they will certainly, we've told them, feel free to provide services outside of that group if that's appropriate. Again, there'll be 5-minute presentations for each presenter within a group. And then at the end of that group presentation, 5 minutes for questions. Then at the end of all of the groups, there'll be 15 minutes to address the group. And then again, this will continue in our Member Connect. We've encouraged all of our national partners on this presentation today to be engaged with us on our Member Connect so that again, you can reach them in one place if you wish to. And then finally, when we do get to questions and answers, NAFSC's Director of Research and Policy Development, Rena Hernandez, will be managing that, and she'll be joining us to pose to the presenters the questions that you've provided in the Q&A. Again, there won't be time for people to provide live, live questions, so just put it into the Q&A, and then we will do our best to select from the Q&A some questions for presenters. Okay, moving forward. Our first presenter, representing the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and Ready to Learn, and really providing all of the resources for PBS Kids and PBS Learning Media, is Pam Johnson. Pam, take it away.
Hi, thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and it is our privilege to be with you here today. I have a fair number of resources that I want to highlight, and mainly what I want to say is, first of all, thank you to NAFSC and the team for pulling us all together. I think, as you might realize, the public media system, our mission is to educate and to serve. And so on a national and local level, in a time like this especially, we are, we are stepping up, and so many of my colleagues working in all the national organizations and at all our local stations are really activating in remarkable ways. And I want to just highlight for you some of the things that are here. I want to remind everybody that all of these assets are free. All of these links that are in this this PowerPoint are live right now, and this will be available to you. And everything is, pretty accessible. And yes, I represent an early learning initiative of public broadcasting, but clearly, when you think about the range of services that we offer, there's information for adults, for older kids, and so forth. But let's just start here briefly. when we think about PBS Kids, when we think about that goes right to homes, to children, when we think about PBS Learning Media, which is our portal for teachers and educators, here's the range of things that are available at the moment. We have a 24/7 channel that is available to all households in the United States. The PBS Kids video app is a mobile app, which is really remarkable because you can get most all programs on demand, and you can actually see the live stream of the PBS Kids 24/7 channel. And this is free. There's no subscription or anything. The PBS Kids game has over a couple hundred educational games. All can be downloaded for offline play anywhere, and this is available as well. And then this incredible, robust website called PBS Kids for Parents has a couple of tools. Obviously, there's always conversations and resources for parents on a wide range of topics, including now healthy habits and how to talk with your children about the virus. But there's also this incredible activity finder, which makes it really easy for families to look for things that are of interest to them or tie to the lessons that the teachers are trying to also provide for home. So I just want to draw your attention to that. And if we go to the next page, other resources continue. One of the things that is coming through right now, especially in response to the situation, is a daily PBS Kids newsletter. And parents can get it, teachers can get it, anybody who's overseeing and watching children. And just as an example, today's daily newsletter is focused on dealing with all sorts of feelings and using Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood show. And the newsletter itself contains the show you can watch, the follow-up activities or follow-up questions a parent can ask. There are digital games you can click right to and go. And then there are some hands-on activities too, like making your own, let's say, photo scrapbook. So tons of opportunity here in these daily newsletters so that parents can engage their kids well and very intentionally every day around a learning goal, whether it's social emotional, whether it's literacy or science. The PBS Kids area of the YouTube Kids is having a number of resources there that are very relevant, like a Healthy Habits playlist. Learning Media is also providing a lot of resources around the area of healthy habits and how to talk about the virus with young people and teenagers. PBS Learning Media has also conducted an in-depth professional development session for teachers on how to do distance learning, how to work effectively with distance learning. And that's available here for everyone too. And plus there are these blog articles that are available, all on topics that are very relevant. And then the last page is, and I think we're going to the last page now. Alice is helping, there we go. Resources in general. When we think about PBS and what it can offer to the citizenry, I just want to point out that this first bullet just indicates the range of what's happening with our news and public affairs programs like NewsHour, Frontline, Nova, and so forth. And then this other incredible opportunity starting Thursday, March 26th, Ken Burns is going to be part of a representing of American History Night with Ken Burns. And so for adults, for our teenagers, our middle schoolers, we're going to be looking at his content. And, we're kind of reminded about Ken Burns that he takes a deep dive look at times in history that are very challenging and how we have overcome as a nation. And really these shows couldn't be more relevant right now as inspiration for us. And then lastly, on the additional resources, what I want to share here, these are listings of what stations across the country are doing in partnership with school districts, state departments of education, with each other across the state. I want you to stay focused on these, check in with your local stations, see what they're doing, because the nature of the response is going to evolve over these coming weeks. Right now, many stations are running special learn at home broadcast schedules from 6 in the morning to like 6 at night. And what's going to be happening increasingly is that a lot of stations are going to be going into service, producing teachers on the air, storytelling on the air, instruction, and so forth, very much tied to a state learning standard. So a lot is happening. Everything is free. It's a moving effort, but it's a major effort. And we really want to connect you to the resources that are available for our youngest children and actually all of our learners.
Oh, Pam, thank you so much. It's no surprise that PBS is taking such a huge role in providing support to both to the field and to the families during these challenging times. Thanks again.
Thanks, Vito.
Next, I'd like to introduce Tommy Sheridan. Tommy is the Deputy Director of the National Head Start Association. Tommy, take it away.
Thank you, Vito. And in particular, thank you to everybody on this call and for all of the work that you all are doing. I know that it is a really scary time, and this is the time when children and families in particular are looking to leaders like all of you to be able to help out and recognize that we're all in it together. So I'm really honored to be able to share just a little bit today from the Head Start perspective of what's going on for really some of our most at-risk and most vulnerable children and families across the country. A little bit of just kind of what's going on, because we are a federal program and we don't quite operate the same way that public schools do, and a lot of other things do. I did want to start with that, and then to share just some of the broader things that NHSA and the Head Start community are working on. Would strongly recommend and urge everyone that to the extent possible, reach out to your local Head Start programs. Even if they are not open or not providing services, they are certainly there for children and families and are going to be there as part. They're going to have a ton of resources and a ton of individualized things based off of what's going on in your individual community. So just on a broad impact, the majority of Head Start programs are closed, but that decision is not a federal decision. That is a local decision. So most of the programs that have opted to stay open have done so based off of the recommendations and needs of the children and families in their communities, as well as of local and state health officials. Our staff are being paid, which is the good thing, and we're very pleased to see that. The administration has granted a wide amounts of flexibilities here and has really said, you know, Head Start does have a lot of requirements to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the most vulnerable, most at risk, but a lot of flexibilities recognizing the unique circumstances that we live. The big thing that we're seeing, and I think that what's really exciting, is that while Head Start centers are being closed, staff are still working, and they're still reaching out in a lot of ways to children, to families, and through a lot of various creative ways. This picture that we have on the screen here is an example of a program, I believe up in Boston is where it's from, and they are working with the children in their communities and working with their parents to provide resources, everywhere from phone calls to actual providing emails and content. And then they've been profiling some of the pictures. So they're sharing activities to do with their local, what they call their Head Start cuties, and getting the word out as much as we possibly can. Programs are also reaching out to family service staff, and teachers are reaching out to families to see what their needs are, what other specific things they might need. And everything that I've heard of from Head Start is that they are doing both phone calls, they're doing the Zoom meetings, they're doing live interactions, and when they're not able to hear from families, understanding that not everybody's around all the time, they're even going to houses, even if that means having a conversation through a screen door or through a glass door, just recognizing and reminding the children and the families that they're not alone, that we're all in this together. And then the other big thing that's happening is that there is additional money on the way. The bill that's being discussed all day today in Congress does look to provide about $750 million of additional resources to Head Start, and we're thrilled to be able to put those to good use for additional mental health supports, socio-emotional supports, and other pieces like that. Go to the next slide here. I think the big thing that Head Start is trying to remember and show and teach all of our, or kind of get the word out to all of our programs is, and all of our staff, is that it's important to remind families that their community is here for them. that they are not alone. And I think that that's a feeling that I think a lot of us feel right now, is that overwhelming. We're not sure of what's coming. We don't know what's down the road, but we are really pleased and happy when we're able to connect with our community. Head Start is that community for so many families. And so that's why programs have looked to transition to home or virtual services, to continue to provide check-ins by trusted partners, and to continue to provide access to resources and materials as allowed and as appropriate. I think this is something that all of us can continue to do, and I think it's something that we all should be looking to do on that as well. We at the National Head Start Association are also looking to lift up those stories, to share with others what is taking place across the country and what are some of the great examples of that. We're also sharing some of the innovative ideas that we've been hearing and seeing, such as providing support for emergency personnel and otherwise. And then there's also been a lot of great partners, some of whom are on this call and others who are providing additional resources, and we're looking to get that word out to families. I think it's going to be great in particular for us to pay attention, especially to that mental health support for children, but also for families. And we're going to continue to put that out, and would encourage folks to follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, and we'll work with Vito and team to make sure to get out those resources. But above all else, just keep hanging strong, keep staying tough, and keep being the leaders that we know everybody on this call is. Thank you.
Tommy, thank you so much. Head Start has long been a model for family engagement and education, and we really appreciate your support during this particular time and taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward, I'd like to introduce Josh Sparrow of Brazelton Touchpoint Center, who is also the Head Start National Center for Parent, Family, and Community Engagement. Josh.
Thank you so much, Vito, for bringing us all together with such short notice and in these very challenging times. And thank you, everyone, for coming together to respond as rapidly as we can to this health care emergency and economic crisis. At the Brazelton Touchpoint Center at Boston Children's Hospital, we partner with families of young children in their communities and systems of care that surround them, so that all children will be healthy, succeed as early learners, and have the opportunity to thrive. The center provides training and technical assistance to all family-facing professionals, Head Start, childcare, other early childhood educators, early interventionists, home visitors, perinatal, pediatric, and mental health care providers, because we're all about whole child, whole family, whole communities. The center also conducts research and evaluation, for example, with the Educare Learning Network, Tribal, Project Launch Grantees, and others. And as Vito said, for the past 9 years, we have also had the privilege of serving as the lead agency for the Office of Head Start and the Office of Child Care's National Center for Parent, Family, and Community Engagement. I wanted to start just by noting that part of the challenge is the wide variation in the situations of each individual and each family in this crisis. Parents who are at home with their children are at home for a variety of different reasons. Some have the possibility of working remotely from home, but the challenge of being held responsible for their work deliverables while trying to care for their children. Many do not have that possibility. Some are essential workers who must go to work, and some are at home because they've been laid off and don't have a paycheck. So this is not a time for us to put pressure on parents to do anything more than they already are as they pivot rapidly to this rapidly changing situation. I don't think we can ask them to become classroom educators. We can't ask them to be happy or to make everyone happy. We wish that were possible, but it's a lot of pressure. If anything, this is a time to come alongside parents in whatever ways we can to reduce isolation and stress, and support them, support each other in these times of even more challenges than ever. And in particular, our focus will be on families who have immigrated from other countries, refugees, families living in poverty, parents who have no childcare but must go to work, and families experiencing homelessness and or food insecurity. I also want to add that as many of us are looking at shifting our work as much as we possibly can online, we all know that there are families who don't have access to broadband, don't have devices to be able to use what we put online, may have limited phone minutes and data. So that has to be part of our focus, even if that is in the advocacy and policy work that we do. I also wanted to mention that because of the wide variation in our contexts and conditions, and our need to be connected and being able to connect almost exclusively through things like Zoom and the telephone, there's a challenge in reaching each other empathically rather than missing each other. And in times of crisis like this, although most of us don't remember another time like this, it can be particularly hard to connect because each of us from one moment to another may really be having a very different feeling in that moment, whether it's fear or hope. And I think our challenge is to both face the reality, which is anxiety provoking, while at the same time maintaining hope. So all we can focus on is what we can do. And here are some of the things that the Present Touchpoint Center is doing in planning. We're racing to get as many of our trainings online as possible. And in addition, we've been approached by a number of national organizations to collaborate on communications and supports for family-facing professionals working with families of young children. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about our collaboration with Sesame Workshop, with Abriendo Puertas, Opening Doors, with Dr. Tulga Wandi's Ariadne Labs, with Parents as Teachers, the Marts Foundation's Mindful Self-Compassion Program, and just to mention the work at the National Center. So we are working on putting out a series of webcasts with Sesame Workshop, which will begin next Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 noon Pacific Time. And the goal of this series of webcasts is to introduce families and professionals to the resources that Sesame Workshop has to support children and their families as they face the fears and anxieties that are arising in this pandemic. The first one will feature both our friends at Sesame Workshop and our friends on the front lines who will help us see how these resources can be used to support children and families. We're also partnering with our friends at Abriendo Puertas in their communication strategy. And our concern together with them is to reach families who may not have access to high quality information in English. And also we're hoping to reach families who do not speak English or Spanish and whose languages are indigenous languages like Mam, Mixteco, or Quetzal, and others. We also are just finishing up a paper which will go out today with Dr. Tulga Wandi's Ariadne Labs on suggestions for pediatricians and pediatric providers on how to reduce families' exposure and protect pediatric healthcare workers. And we are working on a companion piece for parents so that they can better understand what the temporary, we hope, changes will be in pediatric practice. We're in talks with Parents as Teachers to distill from their proven virtual home visiting model best practices that we will get out as fast as we can through virtual means to all of the sectors that now will really be conducting their work virtually. So that would include early childhood educators and early interventionists, as well as child welfare and child service protective workers. We have a series of webcasts planned with the Marts Foundation to bring some basic mindful self-compassion practices, which we believe are now needed more than ever. And we are focusing our social media, which you can find on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on acts of kindness, generosity, and affirmations of humanity. We would love if you would send those our way if you come across those, and hope that you'll join us next week, Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 noon Pacific, for the first in our series of webcasts with Sesame Workshop. And you can go to the Brazelton Touchpoints website to register. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Josh. I'd like to ask Reina Hernandez to join us, and also the other presenters from this group, if you could turn your cameras on and also unmute yourselves. And while they're doing that, I just want to remind everyone, if you are tweeting, the hashtag for this webinar is hashtag NAFSKI COVID response. Hashtag NAFSKI COVID response. Reina.
All right, thank you so much. We've gotten a lot of questions, and so presenters, as you pull yourselves back up on the screen, please try to be brief with your responses, and we'll have follow-up resources as Vito and Alice had mentioned. So one of the first questions was, and we got this one from a number of people, Veronica Rosario and Yardis Garcia and Susana Gutierrez, we're asking about resources available in Spanish. We had several other individuals, including Cecilia Long and Margarita De Salvo, ask about resources in languages other than English and Spanish. So if you could speak to that, I know several questions came specifically around PBS resources in multiple languages, but to any of the speakers.
So I'll just jump in to say that the Sesame workshop resources that are being aggregated and that we will be presenting starting next Wednesday are all available in Spanish. We are working to see if we can also have Spanish translation on those webcasts, and I'm hopeful about that. And in our partnership with Aprendiendo Puertas, that is precisely in order to get Spanish language resources, some of which will be in print and many of which will be video, out to all those who can benefit from them. And as I mentioned, we're also trying to see if we can get some of those available in indigenous languages for those families who do not speak English or Spanish.
And Raina, we have time for one more question, and then at the end we can have additional questions.
Sure. So several questions came in related to the use of non-internet for rural families, for families that have low connectivity, for families who are currently struggling with that. So if you could speak to any resources that do not rely on the internet.
I would like to respond to that. So this is Pam on behalf of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and PBS and team. And I think when our stations are talking about these broadcast channels or services called Learn at Home and so forth, that literally every station and almost every state are working on right now with their departments of education, with their governors, with their local school superintendents. The idea and reason for over the air is precisely this reason. It is still the way that many families need to and want to access content. So it's really important. And also, I think, as I might have mentioned, when we think about like the video app and so forth, or games app, these games can be downloaded so that you're not taking advantage of precious data, time, and expense. But it's over the air broadcasting, and that is key.
Excellent. Thank you, Pam.
And I'll just say from Head Start, we're also sending these types of resources home with children and families. And I see a number of questions too related to this too, that there are food and diapers and formula and things like that Head Start programs are allowed to do up to a certain extent. It's going to depend on each individual program, but that is something that we are looking to serve as resources, or at least connect families to those types of resources when they don't have them. This is a perfect example too. What types of things can we send from the classroom back home?
Thank you, Tommy. By the way, all of the questions that are in the chat, or in the Q&A, I should say, we are going to put on our member community, and we are going to engage all of our partners and work with them to answer all of your questions. So if we don't get to them in this webinar, know that if you join, you'll have access to that member community, and we will do the very best we can to answer all of your questions. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Pam.
Yeah.
And thank you, Josh. Did you have something?
Well, Vito, I can see in some of the chats coming in, some of my colleagues who are writing from stations, that, we also have very hands-on versions of things, toolkits, backpacks, things that travel on the ground as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to a parent leadership, and the two organizations who are going to be presenting on parent leadership are National PTA and UPlan. And Pam, your screen is on. Just turn your screen off and mute yourself. And first, I'd like to introduce my good friend, Helen Westmoreland from National PTA. Helen.
Hi, everybody. Thank you again for taking the time to join us today. And thanks to Vito and the whole NASCI team for pulling this together in short order. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about some of the things specifically that we've provided at National PTA around the COVID crisis. As many of you may know, National PTA is the oldest and largest child advocacy association of a little over 3 million members. Most of our PTAs are based in schools, though not all are. And of those that are in schools, a little more than half are in schools that are designated as Title I schools by the federal government. So the best place I can point you all is we just, our incredible communications team put together a really robust webpage at pta.org/COVID-19, where you can go. There are FAQs. There's a section for parents. There's a section for educators. There's a section for PTA leaders, should you have PTAs in your community, where they can go and get a variety of resources. And we have really taken the tone. I know PBS is on there as well as some of our other speakers. I'll be asking them to update that after today's call, of curating resources. So if you are a family looking for Wi-Fi access, there's a link for you on that page. If you are a school wondering about whether or not you have federal flexibility waivers around school meal distribution in your community, there's a link for you there. If you are a PTA leader wondering how to hold elections or what to do with your event night coming up, there's some information for you there. So our focus around that is socio-emotional support, learning at home, and generally healthy habits, and helping all of us sort of stay sane in all of this insanity. I wanted to also let you know about a few other things that are going on with National PTA specific to this response. And just a place you can go if you want to stay updated. Probably like many of you, the situation is changing daily, if not hourly. In fact, I just got an update. We are partnering very closely with a number of education associations, from the teachers unions to the principal associations to the school psychologists, to be sure that whatever stimulus package is being put together takes into account the needs of all families and educators, specifically those that face the most challenges during this time. So we just got word that the Senate Appropriations Committee is currently thinking about and voting on a $31 million package that would support the Department of Education and its initiatives to ensure both flexibility as well as funding for a variety of things, from Wi-Fi access to remote learning, which is a priority of one of these associations too. We are also surveying our membership across the country to really be sure we are keeping our finger on the pulse of what families' needs are, how local schools and communities are responding to those needs, and then how PTAs are helping and can continue to help. The silver lining in this is a time where many folks are reaching out and asking, you know, I can go get groceries for someone. I've got internet access someone can use. I've got a set of books or materials someone can borrow. And so PTAs are very much sort of stepping into that role. And we're trying to capture that and share that out with our membership so we can have a community-wide response. Some of you may be familiar with PTA's podcast, Notes from the Backpack. This is a podcast for families. We are kind of going into emergency support mode and recording a number of episodes that are specific to the COVID response. So if you are working with families who may not be interested in getting any more emails in their inbox, there will be something that they can just listen to. And so lastly, I would just say, just reiterate that things are changing very fast. So if you want to keep up to date on anything that PTA is providing or doing, you can go to this link here and sign up. We send out newsletters of a variety of sorts almost every other day to our membership and constituency. So you can go there to find out and learn more. Thank you, guys.
Helen, thanks so much. I'm going to move to the United Parent Leaders Action Network. Rosalia Grillier. Rosalia, are you with us? And Helen, if you can just turn your camera off and mute yourself, and then we're going to come back for questions in about 5 minutes. Rose, are you with us? There she is.
Somebody took my screen off. Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
So, again, I'm Rosalia Grillier. A United Parent Leaders Action Network, or as you phrased it, Vito, U-Plan. Our member groups are over 33 organizations that are parent-led across the country, are doing amazing work around this issue locally, statewide, and then nationally, making sure that we support one another, share information and best practices around the issues of food insecurities, education, economic security. A lot of folks are really struggling now that were working jobs that are now on hold. So parents and families and communities, especially challenged communities, are really having a tough time. So we very much appreciate this particular thing. And we want to encourage all of you guys to please post your resources, visit our various web pages, or go to UPlan, post things on UPlan's Facebook so parents and families can have access to all this valuable information being shared today. We're also looking at immigrant issues, safety, and mental health issues within across the country within our parent-led organizations. And then the piece of support for one another. You'll find different postings every time legislation or anything passes that is in reference to the opportunities within this time of COVID. We are also sharing those things with one another, and we encourage everyone to support those initiatives by sharing your information with parents. And you can go to our website and post those things, or give us a heads up, or contact Erin for anything that parents should know to be able to be more effective on the ground. Thank you, guys.
Rose, thank you so much. There's a lot of momentum in this country right now for parent leadership organizations, and I think that National PTA and UPlan are leading the way. Thank you both for your tremendous work. If we could bring Reina Hernandez back.
Sure. So
ask Helen Westmoreland if she can turn on her camera and unmute herself to join us.
very good. So Rose, you mentioned both mental health and safety in addition to food insecurity and those types of issues. Could you speak a little bit more to that? We've had a number of questions from people thinking about mental health, trauma, families that may be really struggling, maybe were struggling even before the crisis hit.
Well, again, we're across the country over 33 member organization groups. So it's hard to pinpoint one thing, but I will say that the rumors and the fear that's been created during this time, just for parents to be able to hear from someone that they trust more factual information to alleviate some of those things which cause additional stress is huge within itself. And so we've tried to be a resource between the various groups to dispel a lot of the rumors and those things that just aren't factual, to give people reassurance and support.
Great. And then similar to the question that was asked before, a lot of questions are coming in related to families who, where the internet may not be the best way to get a hold of them. And as you know, Rose, sometimes even the telephone isn't a reliable way of getting a hold of them. So people are asking about different strategies or ways to do that kind of outreach.
Absolutely. And especially in challenged communities, that is a huge issue. I will say across the country, it makes me so proud as an American to say that a lot of governors and mayors have really met the challenge. I'm getting all teary-eyed. Have really met the challenge during this time to make sure that the media is updating families. I heard someone mention earlier, most folks have access to a television, and when the media can come out and tell you step by step on a daily basis, that has been a huge push that parents have been behind with their legislators and systems and policy makers. And so parents have been at the forefront of keeping them accountable. So I would say that's one of the great things that's working well now. And then some places people are going door to door or leaving messages or notes. So we've really been creative across the country in finding other ways to reach people who are disenfranchised.
Great. And Helen, if I could just ask you, do you have any resources? Is there anything that folks can turn to PTA around regarding at-home learning and resources for parents around helping their children at home?
Absolutely. So webpage I mentioned, pta.org/COVID-19. We've curated a number of great home learning resources there, including just tips for parents of like, you know, how do I talk to my child about what's going on? How do I keep myself sane and balanced? And what's realistic, what's not. We know for many families this is going to be a very trying but also personal experience of how they support their kids, keep their jobs, keep food on the table. So we're very much just sort of curating and providing those back to folks with a little bit of context about what might be a good fit for different people, but absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. You're muted, Vito.
I did that again. I apologize, everyone. I just want to mention that all of our questions, all of your questions will be in our member community, and we'll work with our partners presenting today to answer those questions. Moving to the next category, which is Cradle to Career. The three organizations who will be presenting, we will start with the National Center for Families Learning, followed by the NEA, and followed by the Institute for Educational Leadership. First is NCFL, Josh Kraber, the Executive Vice President. Josh.
Thanks, Vito, and thanks for everybody for coming together around such important issues that are confronting our families, our education systems, and really everybody today. The National Center for Families Learning is focused on eradicating poverty through family-based education solutions. And so for the last 30 years, we've made the argument that family literacy and family learning are critical to the future of our country. Unfortunately, today we're looking at a situation where family literacy and family engagement are no longer add-ons to our education systems and our human services systems. These are now the ways that we're going to have to lean on and think about activating as we continue to build a stronger country, one family at a time. Just briefly about NCFL, we are a national organization. We work in about 39 states and provide resources that focus both on building adult capacity and child capacity and attempting to bring families together to learn. For us, the definition of family is the caregiver in the home. We don't spend time, parsing out who that is. And so for this brief discussion that we're going to have today, just know that we're willing to partner with any of you and try to leverage our resources and what we've learned over the last 30 years to help make this moment in time have its greatest impact and prepare us for the future. So just to advance to the next slide real quick, in terms of what most people are looking for right now in this moment and talking about resources and what's available, each of these items on your screen is a clickable link. So you can actually spend time looking through these after this. So I'm not going to talk about each and every one of them. I'm going to pull out a couple of resources that I think are pretty great to use right off the shelf as we look at more family literacy and family learning taking place in the home. First and top of the list is a web-based community known as wonderopolis.org. You can click on that and take a look. Here, NCFL leads the creation of a daily Wonder of the Day that is meant to inspire family communication. This resource has been in place for more than 11 years. The community continues to grow, and we will create daily content for families and even some additional resources as we move into this crisis around lesson planning and things that can happen in the home. But to be clear, we don't want to put pressure on families to have to deliver instruction. At the same time, we want to balance that with the reality that our biggest delivery for education right now is in the home. And so we try to provide strategies. We're an implementation organization, and we hope that we can partner with some of you to provide that. Another resource that I would just call out is the 30 Days of Family Learning. This is a 30-day calendar that gives different kinds of resources that you can use each day for a 30-day period of time. Obviously, you might have to use that more than once under the current environment. The volunteer toolkit actually shows video tutorials of interactive literacy-based strategies. Again, these are all free resources you can take a look at. We had designed them for volunteers. Today, it might be parents or caregivers that take a look at those. And then on the adult ed side, we have the Learn to Earn toolkit. This provides several lessons that can be used for adults seeking to build their own skill level. Because remember, we know that when adults build their skills along with their children, we see better outcomes for the whole field. If you'd please advance. And then finally, I think for you as a takeaway in NCFL, would you let this all settle or potentially reach out? NCFL is an implementation organization. And so while some groups have way more resources than we do, and we have some great resources as well, we know that parents and community members and educators are wondering, how do we do this? What are the methods? And that's really where NCFL has a lot of experience. We have a staff who's ready to step up to the plate and help support school systems, community groups, and parents themselves in terms of how to implement high impact, interactive, intergenerational strategies in the home. So thank you so much for your time. Our contact information will be on the next slide, and we look forward to hearing from several of you, either in this conversation or as you continue to reach out.
Josh, thanks so much. Next is Merwin Scott, who is the Director of Community Advocacy and Partnership Engagement at the National Education Association. Merwin.
Great. Good afternoon. Let me just say to you, Vito, and your amazing team at the National Association for Family and Community Engagement, thank you so much. I'm honored to join you all today during this time, and also honored to join the other incredible presenters who work for amazing organizations. This epidemic has hit me personally. A good friend of mine just lost a sister down in Atlanta, Georgia. And so this is really two other close friends who've been affected right now. So this is really just a tough time in this country. So I'm able to join you today with the strength of our president, Lily Eskelsen Garcia, and the 3 million educators, teachers, and support professionals from around the country. Again, my name is Merwin Scott. I'm the Director of Community Advocacy and Partnership Engagement Department within the Center for Social Justice at the NEA. The Community Advocacy and Partnership Engagement Department is NEA's liaison to the organizations and leaders touching our core communities of color, the African American community, the American Indian Alaska Native community, the Asian American Pacific Islander community, and the Hispanic, Latino, Latinx community. I'm excited about emerging work in the family, schools, and community partnership space. But at this time right now, the NEA and our members are concentrating on many areas because this is all new. This is new territory for us. But we want to highlight 3 areas today and sort of provide some tools and resources to you as well. So educators are working to secure the health, safety, and economic welfare of their students, their schools, their communities, and their own personal families also. The second, we have to look at this crisis through a racial and social justice lens. What is crystal clear for many of us, this crisis has placed a microscope on the systemic racism and inequities throughout our country. We want to make sure that our partnerships, and lastly, we want to make sure that our partnerships, this is also important today, that our partnerships, our outreach and engagement, that all of our stakeholders are at the table. Next slide, please. So these are around the tools and resources. NEA.org/coronavirus is our one-stop shop for all resources, tools, actions around COVID-19. We want the NEA.org/coronavirus provides the following. When you go to that link, you'll see the first thing I want to start to remind people and provide them as much information on what is COVID-19. What can you take, where action, like a lot of things are, like I think earlier, I think her name, our good friend Helen from PTA, she spoke about what's going on in Congress right now. When can you take action and send messages to Congress? There's a message of hope and inspiration from our president, Lily Eskelsen Garcia, also. There's also, but last but not least, there was an explainer video talking to students. How do we talk to our students and our children about the coronavirus as well? There's also resources from the NEA on education policy, information from the Center for Disease Controls, from our amazing community partners, some who are on this Zoom call with us today, and other healthcare professionals also. So when you go to our website, you'll see 3 things that we want to highlight. How we're engaging our members right now. You'll see, and I think on our screen there, you see our member, Glenda Utter. She's one of our ESP members, our education support professionals from Oregon, and she's been making sure that students receive healthy meals. You'll also see an area around legislative and advocacy and how we can engage Congress. But also our member, Margaret Powell, back home in North Carolina, she actually realizes that politics is all local, and she's one of our back home lobbyists, and she's been engaging with her Congress people, but then also with her state and local elected officials back home as well. Last but not least, you will see a community advocacy and partnership engagement piece. We really want to focus on social justice. In San Jose, California, you'll see Jason Chang. He noticed that there was an uptick in bullying in the Asian Pacific Islander community. And he was able to have incorporate straight talk about racism in his lesson plans. In closing, I was excited to see educators driving neighborhoods, checking on their students, bus drivers, taking students healthy meals, parents and community members making sure their students were safe. Educators are problem solvers. Community leaders are problem solvers. I'm happy to join this call to hear the good work that is taking place and resources that are available, and then opportunities to partner with many of the leaders that are not only service presenters, but many of the questions that we will receive. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Merwin. I want to just say that, first of all, I want to thank the NEA for their leadership. And I also want to thank the NEA for their commitment to family, school, and community engagement. Many of you know that NAFSC is working very closely with them around pre-service teacher preparation and credentialing NEA members and family engagement. So we really appreciate your leadership, and particularly during this time. Thank you, Merwin. Next, I'd like to introduce Kwesi Rollins, the Vice President for Leadership and Engagement for the Institute for Educational Leadership, and also a NAFSC board member. Kwesi.
So thanks, Vito, and thanks to everyone for pulling this together. This is obviously an important dialogue, and one of the best things about a crazy moment like this is the extent to which we are all managing to deepen our connections, deepen our partnerships, and work together. And so in spite of the fact that we need to keep physical distance in this moment in order to stem the spread of this illness, we know that it's the social connections and the closer social connections that are really gonna get us back together and put us in a better position to respond. At IEL, you know, most of you know IEL is a national nonprofit, 50+ years old, based in Washington, D.C. We're the home for the Coalition for Community Schools. We host one of the largest national family and community engagement conferences, as well as the Community Schools National Forum. We have a great deal of work from cradle to career, everything from our early childhood education to our work with principals and district leaders, to our work with youth with disabilities transitioning into the workforce. And so all of those content areas kind of come together in a moment like this, and they all present opportunities for deeper work and connection, but they also all present unique challenges. We've taken the approach of really using this time to convene our networks pretty regularly, to touch bases with them, to give them an opportunity to connect with their peers, and to give them also an opportunity to share resources. And so we've done that with our district leaders. We began last week what's going to be an every other week virtual town hall meeting. And this is with our district leaders network on family and community engagement. These are folks who coordinate, for the most part, they coordinate or are part of teams that are focused on family and community engagement at the school district level. We had a very robust conversation last week to look at specific challenges that districts and district family engagement departments are grappling with. Our Coalition for Community Schools has been having weekly town hall meetings for the field, engaging hundreds of initiative leaders, community school coordinators, United Ways, all of the various partners that are part of operations like that. Both of our teacher unions, both NEA and AFT, have been part of that. And so that's been an important touch point just to kind of find out the ways in which community school leaders and initiative leaders are stepping up to the plate to really protect our most vulnerable children, youth, and families. Additionally, like the National PTA and many other national partners, we have been working with our connections on Capitol Hill to try to influence and educate as the House and the Senate deliberate over the kind of package that's going to support our most vulnerable communities. And in fact, we submitted a letter today signed by 30 national, state, and local partners. We've been brainstorming with a lot of our partners on issues like chronic absenteeism with attendance work, on issues like home visiting with parent-teacher home visits, and also with the Partnership for the Future of Learning, which is a national collaborative of funders, practitioners, and activists. And a lot of that brainstorming has also been focused on kind of the immediate situation, but we also think more importantly, we know that there's going to be an aftermath, and at some point, as we think about transitioning back into whatever the new normal ends up being, we're going to need a lot of thinking, a lot of innovation, a lot of planning, and even deeper partnership, because we know that in a crisis moment like this, folks who are already in vulnerable situations suffer the most and have the least amount of protection. And so it's going to require all of us to use our brain power to really think ahead about how to prepare for the transition and the aftermath. And so as part of that, we've been maintaining a resource page for all of our constituents, our networks, our partners. That's a very simple kind of a page that can be accessed and added to on a regular basis. And I've shared some information as my time winds down in the chat, in the general chat, so that you can connect with us on all of those particular issues, as well as follow us on Twitter. So a pleasure to be with you, and I look forward to Q&A.
Kwesi, thank you so much. And if I could ask Josh and Ro turn on their cameras and unmute themselves. And Raina, if you could come on to address some questions.
Very good. So for any of the speakers, we've had a number of questions regarding use of technology in different ways. Where can people go for resources on understanding? One person asked about how to connect with families using Zoom and that sort of thing. Several other questions came in about how to use different app technology or if there are recommendations. And we had one question really talking about how community functions like parent cafes and family fun nights are no longer happening. So if there's a way for strategizing around how to continue to carry those on. So any thoughts?
So I can speak to that a little bit. So if other folks can, there's an echo that I'm not creating. So two things about that. One is that just in an ad hoc way, many educators around the country are using technology to connect with their children and families. They're making phone calls, they're reaching out, they're checking in, not just around virtual learning, but just checking in and doing wellness checks. And that's the kind of thing that we want to encourage. And in the conversation with some of our partners at NEA yesterday, we talked about how we could really encourage the widespread use of that, and also the connection to social media around that kind of behavior. One of the innovative things that some community schools places are doing is trying to figure out how to have virtual homework diners. A number of places have been doing homework diners for a while, and it's a way for families and children to come together at school, have a meal together, and work on homework together. And so this week, folks are in different parts of the country are seeing if it's possible to do that virtually, where you set a time and everybody has dinner together and works on homework together, but they do it using an online platform. So this is one of those kind of moments where folks are being very innovative, and I think that's one of the examples of a way to do things. And we've got to try. We've got to innovate. We've got to try and use what's at our disposal.
And you guys, can I say parents have really gotten creative, and so later on, I thought I heard Vito say we'll have an opportunity to share some of those experiences, and maybe they can be posted somewhere for folks to utilize if they want.
Absolutely, Rose. Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Rose. And so another question that's come in, and we may get into this with some later presenters as well, but there have been a lot of questions about working with children with special needs, particularly when they're at home, if there are resources for families as they're trying to figure out how to support both children with special needs and then also mental health.
I'm happy to take a stab at that. It's one of the things that for us, we're more so documenting the extent to which it's a challenge. And there have been a few innovations out there. I think one of the unintended consequences of having to overnight go to kind of a virtual learning and a distance learning platform is a lot of that is not set up for children with disabilities and children with special needs. And we haven't figured that out well. And so this is one of the things that we're monitoring very closely. We're compiling information, and to the extent that we have good models and good information, we'll be updating those in the resource page that I shared with folks earlier. But we're really, that's one of those kinds of situations. In fact, some districts were even afraid to officially launch distance learning because they knew it was inadequate for their special needs kids and didn't want to put themselves into any kind of a vulnerable state from a legal standpoint. So it is a challenge. And I think in hindsight, this is one of the things that we've got to think through, that there are certain virtual platforms and virtual concepts around distance learning that just aren't going to do it depending on the disability and depending on the needs of families and kids. And so we've got to figure out how to work on that. And that's an inadequate answer, but it's the best I have.
Thank you, Kwesi. And we had a couple of comments on that. Just it's important for everyone to know that every state has a parent training information parent training and information center. And so you can find that information online, and we'll include those resources. And we've got 12 states that have statewide family engagement centers. And so there could be resources at the state level, but PTICs in particular support families of children with special needs.
Thank you, Rana. Yes, thank you so much. And thank you to Josh, Merwin, and Kwesi. Our final category for today's presentation is around equity and community. And so the three organizations who will be presenting are the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium, the Public Library Association, and the National Family Support Network. And we'll start with the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium, MAC, and Susan Schaefer. Turn it over to you.
Thank you, Vito. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to tell you what a privilege it is to be part of this wonderful group of leaders who demonstrate every day the importance of collaboration, the value of partnerships, and the strength of community. I'm going to give you a very brief overview. All of this information is available on our website at maec.org. MAC is a 27-year-old organization whose mission is to increase educational equity to advance social justice. One of our seminal programs is one of the Regional Equity Assistance Center, the Center for Education Equity, who work with a network of other equity assistance centers throughout the country on issues of race, gender, national origin, SES, and English learners. So first I'm going to provide you some specific information about MAC, and then provide you with a list of contacts so that you can go to your equity assistance centers for a variety of issues related to families, schools, and communities. I've also been asked to make a statement, and thank you, Raina, for bringing this up, that the State Family Engagement Centers, MAC has 2 states, Pennsylvania and Maryland, are working diligently with SES and other community-based partners to be available for families and educators. Our immediate goals are to work to understand state and local needs, to understand current responses to COVID-19 and the available resources, creating a landing page on our website for these resources, which will be updated on an ongoing basis. And finally, to establish structures for ongoing information sharing and communication. As everyone has said, this is a fluid situation and all of us must be adaptive. We know that everyone feels the impact of this virus, but we also know that the effects are hardest among those who are most vulnerable. This pandemic will likely amplify, and already has, the inequities in our country, not least in our education system. At MAC, we continue our work with more commitment than ever, and so here is our plan. All staff are working remotely and continue to be available to support our clients. Feel free to reach out to us by email or phone at any time. Our technical assistance work is continuing as we design new ways of staying connected and providing services. We are providing live online conversations, webinars, weekly newsletters, and we'll be updating this webpage with multilingual resources for educators and family. We've confined it to 6 areas. We're, again, trying to stay in our lane because I know that everyone is being bombarded with so many emails, which is why I appreciate what NAFSCI is doing today. So we will be providing resources, at-home learning activities, and strategies across the following areas: literacy, math, science, motivational messages and strategies, structures and routines for families and educators, and social emotional learning. We are, on all of our webinars, we will have a child psychologist who has a specialization with special needs children, who will be answering questions. They can send questions to our website, and also will be able to answer questions on the actual webinars themselves. So we tried to figure out what we need first, and what families need, what educators need, is information on these frontline issues. So our team has created a Tableau visualization for each state in our region. In addition to that, the other equity assistance centers will do that for their regions as well. It includes information from the SEA on COVID-19, nutrition for children, unemployment information. You just click on the state and these links will become available to provide you this information in one space. We're also, for educators, going to be providing resources on these same categories, again, concentrating on searchable online databases and particularly looking at equitable distance learning opportunities, including children with disabilities. We're going to have information on mental health and coping, African-centered in-home curriculum, policy updates in response to COVID-19, and a free webinar series. In addition to that, we're going to be providing information in partnership with folks like NAFSCI and others who are on this webinar today, with national and local educational organization on school districts' actions to address COVID-19 as it impacts school closures. We know that this information is essential to all of us as we explore and update our approach to assist and support schools and districts during this crisis. And as Kwesi talked about, we're also beginning to look ahead so that we want to be important thought partners working with local community-based organizations, SEAs, families, and school districts to begin the essential task of creating practical steps to reopen and ensure the normalization, whatever that's going to look like, for families, and prepare families, schools, and districts for this new normal. And as I said in the beginning, this catastrophic crisis will amplify the inequities in our educational systems. So the EACS will be conducting educational conversations and also the immediate and long-term impact of these inequities, including rigor in instruction, the digital divide, as we've talked about today, and particularly in rural and urban areas, and the need for language diversity in all materials that go to parents and caretakers. We want to be good thought partners as schools, districts, state departments of education, and our families and community-based organizations begin to wrestle with now surviving, trying to make this a time that we can work with our children and families in the best way we can, assist our educators in the kinds of resources that they need, and at the same time, being prepared as we look forward. So with that, on behalf of the Educational Equity Assistance Centers, the State Family Engagement Centers, and as chair of the board of directors from NAFSCI, and on behalf of my amazing staff, I wish you sustained health and well-being.
Thank you so much, Susan. Next on our presentation is Scott Allen, the Deputy Director of the Public Library Association. Scott.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much to NAFSCI for inviting us to be on this great webinar, and I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. I am with the Public Library Association, which is a division of the American Library Association, and we work with about 10,000 public library systems and operating out of 17,000 branches in the United States. Public libraries have a long history of family engagement, starting with using story time to teach parents about reading at home and make home a learning environment. And our current work with public libraries is helping them expand on this potential. So we're helping them reach out to parents who might not otherwise use the public library, raise up parent voices in their programming, help parents who use the library meet and support each other, and also work better with schools and other community organizations. So what I'd like to do today is give you a little picture of what public libraries are doing to respond to COVID-19 and what it might mean for you and the families you serve. As you can imagine, COVID-19 has caused thousands of public libraries to close, over 3,000 earlier this week, and that number keeps going up. Our organization, PLA, issued a formal recommendation that they do close to protect public health and protect their own staff. So this is really new territory for institutions that have prided themselves on being free, accessible, and usually helping in times of crisis. But fortunately, many public libraries already offer ebooks and other online collections, and they deliver online programming. They're making some quick changes that they can, such as suspending late fees on materials if they even charge those anymore, because many have stopped, and issuing library cards virtually. And then they're trying to adapt to the reality that they may be closed for weeks or months. So what else are they doing? Many libraries are transitioning their story times to be online. I just saw the Denver Public Library put out a call for subscribers to its YouTube channel story times, and another library I saw doing a Facebook live chat. It was a librarian standing in her living room with her phone, but they were still trying to get it done. PLA is helping them learn about different platforms and also address certain challenges that come up, such as how copyright might impact recording and posting of those storytime programs. We've heard that some libraries are kicking off their summer learning programs early and virtually, knowing that right now kids may need more educational content. I just saw a library announce its spring reading challenge by saying, parents, are you looking for incentives to get your kids to read while they're housebound? So they're trying to do what they can. And as you all know, and I've seen come up in the chat many times today, public libraries are critical access points for internet and computer equipment for families who don't have access at home. So we've encouraged public libraries through a formal statement to maintain these services. ALA has recommended that public libraries keep their Wi-Fi on and accessible, even if it means that users need to sit outside or in the parking lot to access it. A lot of small and rural libraries have already told us they can't close because they're the only internet provider in the area, and people need to file for unemployment benefits or other services because of this crisis. Quite a few libraries do offer customers Wi-Fi hotspots to check out. And in a survey that we've just started fielding this week, we see about 30% of libraries are telling us that they're continuing to offer those hotspot lending programs even while they're closed, and a few are trying to add capacity. So we hope that they can do that. Over 90% of US public libraries also offer computer training, and a lot of that is done online. So they're recommending free programs like digitallearn.org, Microsoft Digital Literacy, and some libraries have subscription programs that you can access through their website for advanced online courses. A lot of libraries too are now trying to implement curbside service. Typically this involves setting specific hours, communicating to your patrons about how to put material on hold, calling or emailing patrons when it's available, and then designating where they can pick that material up. We're really looking forward to when libraries can reopen and continue to offer all the diverse services that they do offer, because this crisis is going to hurt families, their employment and their income and their health. And so those services that public libraries offer are going to be more important than ever. Many public libraries, as you might know, offer job help. This can start with applying for jobs online, but move into things like interview practice, GED help, small business development, and even interview clothes that they can check out. Libraries offer skills training, helping adults get more competitive in the job market by learning basic and advanced skills. And also, they are great community connectors, helping people find and access healthcare, social services, government programs, and they do a lot for health. So some libraries help people find health information, but also do things like yoga classes, health fairs, and connecting them to health insurance. So those are all critical. I want to wrap up with some thoughts on what you can do as community leaders and what you can help families do. Encourage all your community members and families to find out what their local libraries are doing. Visit the library website, follow the library on Facebook and Twitter. We hope that you will connect with families and promote public libraries, particularly with schools closed. We hope that educators will remind families that libraries have ebooks, media, and even classes that the family can still take online. We encourage schools, early childhood programs, and others to reach out to the local library and strategize about what you can do together. And also remember that when the crisis starts to fade, libraries will be there for families, particularly adults, to help with their employment, skill development, financial literacy, health reference, and even more. There are more libraries in the US than there are McDonald's locations, so you have no excuse not to connect with your local public library. So thank you so much for including us, and I look forward to the Q&A.
What an excellent point, Scott. Thank you so much. We're going to move to our final presenter, and then we'll bring everybody back on for a short period of time. Next, it's a pleasure to introduce my good friend Andrew Russo, who is the co-founder and director of the National Family Support Network. Andrew.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to check in with all of you today. Appreciate all that everyone is doing across the country to help ensure that children and families are safe, strong, and supported during these trying times. Appreciate NAFSCI bringing us all together today for this opportunity. So first, just want to take a minute to talk about family resource centers, because not everyone is familiar with what these programs are. We often refer to them as America's best kept secret. So family resource centers are welcoming hubs of support, services, and opportunities for families. They work with families with an approach that is multi-generational. So not only working with the parents, but working with the children, working with extended family, grandparents as well. And their approach is strengths-based and family-centered. They may be community-based or school-based. So the image you see at the top of the slide is of a community-based family resource center in Vermont, and at the bottom is of a school-based FRC in Connecticut. And they provide support for families at low or no cost for participants. So that's what family resource centers are. Next slide, please. And then to understand the lay of the land, it's important to flag that there are more than 3,000 of these programs across the country. And this map illustrates the states that not only have family resource centers, but actually have networks of them. So that's 30 states and the District of Columbia that have these kinds of programs. And you can find out more information about the networks in your states and the specific centers by going to the website that you see there below for the National Family Support Network, and then going to the member page. And when you go to the member page, it'll pop up this map that is actually an interactive map where you can click on the different states and go to their websites that are also linked there from that map. Next slide, please. So in terms of what family resource centers are doing in response to the COVID-19 crisis, important to mention that all of these centers are still open. All of them across the country. They're continuing to work with families, even when everything around them may be closing. So for example, these programs are working to meet families' concrete needs, such as distribution of school lunches, food vouchers, diapers, and other essential products that families might need via pickup and delivery. So for example, in Kentucky, there are 856 school-based family resource centers, 856 of them. So they are everywhere across very rural areas, urban areas, everywhere. And even though the schools are closed, the family resource centers have taken up the mantle to ensure that the children are still receiving their school lunches by working to deliver and have families pick them up. Next, family resource centers are switching to offering different activities using technology. So the bread and butter of their work is providing parenting support and access to resources. So now looking how they can do those things virtually. So as others have mentioned, conducting home visits using Zoom, which is HIPAA compliant. Some programs have provided iPads to families so that they may participate. They've moved to providing parent education classes and support virtually. They also regularly call and check in with families or FaceTime with them, knowing that that is really important to reducing social isolation. Because as we know, in times of distress, that levels of family stress go up. And also families are more isolated than ever. And both of those things, increased stress levels and increased isolation, are highly correlated with child abuse. So it's more important than ever that we're out there to support and strengthen families. And these programs are very aware of their key role in that. And so that's why they continue to do their work. They also are utilizing social media and flyer distribution to provide information for families about resources that were also mentioned today, such as free internet, homeschool resources, free lunches, and social emotional resources as well. So that's a quick thumbnail sketch of the lay of the land of these kinds of programs and the work they're doing across the country during this crisis that may be of use to you to know about, connect with, and leverage for the communities you work with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you to the equity and community grouping. And what we're going to do now, based on having the last 10 minutes, is we're going to bring everybody back on. And Raina, if we could just make sure that one or two of the questions speak specifically to equity and community, since they didn't have the opportunity alone to be able to address questions.
Sure.
10 minutes.
Absolutely. Well, and this was great information. Really, I think a lot of questions had come in throughout the course of the webinar, talking about food insecurity, talking about homeless families, talking about all of the struggles that families will have who are becoming unemployed, and the recovery efforts. And we've already heard a number of different resources from this particular group. I just wanted to give one more opportunity if there's anything that hasn't been addressed yet regarding those. There's just been such a flurry, in meeting families' basic needs.
Yeah, I think that all of us at this time really have an obligation to make sure that those families that are particularly marginalized are put at the top of the list. And so I know that the work that folks like IEL are doing, that MAC is doing, NAFSC's doing, other organizations are really going to think hard and partner with other organizations to make sure that resources, information, and services to the best of our abilities get to those folks most in need. And so those are the groups that from the Equity Assistance Centers that we're looking at first.
And, as you mentioned, Susan, the most marginalized families, we had a couple of questions specifically speaking to non-citizen families, potentially undocumented families, families that may be impacted by the public charge limitations. So if you have any comments related to or thoughts or resources, particularly regarding non-citizen families.
Yes. Is someone else? There's an echo. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. So it's funny, Raina, I just got an email from one of our staff, and one of the things that they're working on is precisely that. I think we need to get away from labels, and all of those families are in survival mode, and we're not in a position of questioning or denying services, nor can we legally. And so the kinds of materials and information, and to make sure that all of the materials not just are in English and Spanish, but that are multilingual, is what we're working to attain. And it's just extremely important. Again, I can't emphasize enough that we see a lot of inequities under traditional regular times, but now it just, you can't deny it. You just can't deny it. We're working, for example, with Prince George's County. They're not doing online work because this is one of the largest school districts in the country. They don't have access to internet in the way that other communities do. And so we're making sure that we're thinking back to how we get information to those families in a way that is not connected to the internet.
Thank you, Susan. And we know that there are some limitations in terms of access to public resources and eligibility. We have a number of members that are sharing resources now, and we'll make sure that all of that information gets gathered, specifically around issues of ICE and issues of eligibility. We'll make sure we include those resources as a follow-up. And I think just to wrap things up, in particular, we've had, so something that hasn't been addressed yet, but this could be to any one of the speakers. A lot of people who work in programs, we've had some questions from after school time programs, also, you know, anyone who's federally funded, they're asking questions about policy and waivers and what they're allowed to do or not do, or where they can turn for resources on that. Does anyone have any thoughts?
This is Tommy. I'm happy to jump in a little bit from Head Start. Absolutely. This is the time right now when I think a lot of policymakers are open and interested in granting as much flexibility or as much issue as possible, or excuse me, as much leeway as possible. We've certainly seen this with some issues we ran into around child and adult care food program, how we're getting those feeding programs out and what we're doing with that, and Congress acted very quickly. I think some of the other folks, I know I heard from PTA and others were talking about that. NEA is doing that. I would just strongly encourage you to get in touch with your representatives in DC. There's a lot of different groups that are active in a lot of different things that I think however it works, or whatever area you're looking into, the folks that are paying attention to this absolutely are monitoring it. And I mean, I have calls from the Hill, you know, pretty much all hours of the day, all days of the week, these past few weeks. Hill staff are working around the clock to figure out what are the waivers that we need and how do we get the bureaucracy out of the way. So if there's issues that you're running into, flag it for any one of us, flag it for the NAFC folks, and they can forward it on to us. And I think that we can absolutely make sure, because the appetite's there, which is really good and really wonderful. And I'll also just share, you can also just reach out to your state, reach out to your governor's office. If you're running into an issue, that's one thing that I've seen. We had an issue in one state. The Head Start program literally emailed the governor's staff. By the next day, that problem was solved. So I do think that our elected officials are the answer in this time, and would encourage you to rely on all of us to be able to help.
Raina, I was just on the two calls with the Department of Education. They have already approved 30 states for waivers around their state assessments. So that's important for folks to know. They are also, you can go on to ed.gov/coronavirus, and they are collating and putting together all the information that's necessary so that it's in one place at the department. If you have questions of any of these kinds of issues, you can go to COVID/19 at ed.gov. And they have a rapid response team who will turn these questions around as quickly as possible. So I have to say the department right now is working very collaboratively with those that are federally funded to make sure that we have what we need and they have information to get out to as many people as possible.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. And just to wrap up on the Q&A, we've also gotten a lot of information, because by far I think the biggest set of questions were around when there's a lack of technological access, when there's a lack of internet, when there's a lack of devices, when there's a lack of adults who can support the use of technology when kids are learning. You all gave so many great physical resources, in-person resources. The idea that just knowing libraries may still have their Wi-Fi on even when they're closed, I think was great to hear. We've also had some members share that there are a number of their local internet providers that are providing free internet service, so making that information available as well. So we'll make sure that as we're including resources, we include some of what you're submitting to. Vito?
And you can also encourage parents to be your own advocates for your families and communities. I had a member text me while we were on here talking about how she had to advocate for her child with an IEP. And so for those who don't have access to all of these things that we're talking about, ask around, call your 311s or your local government. Across the country, I can guarantee you that youth plan parents are pushing for the legislations that need to happen to reach those who are underserved and struggling at this time. So try to find out who those organizations are and be the best advocates for yourself. Dig hard.
Thank you, Rose. In closing, I want to just I want to thank everyone for your time today. I want to thank all of our partners. It is an honor to serve this field. Kwesi talked about the challenges that we're all dealing with social distancing, and I am so proud to have such a strong network within this field that we can turn to. And I promise you all that we are going to leverage this network so that we can continue to provide broad support and support for each other. Again, I urge you to become a member so you can have access to the Member Connect, the repository. We're going to get the webinar out to you in an email archive, as well as it will be available on the website. And I wish you and all of your families well during this difficult time. Take care.
Thank you, Vito.